Точка движется и не движется, вся из лунного серебра. Песня слышится и не слышится в эти тихие вечера. Песня слышится и не слышится в эти тихие вечера. Что ж ты, милая, смотришь искоса, низко голову наклоня? Трудно высказать и не высказать все, что на сердце у меня. Трудно высказать и не высказать все, что на сердце у меня. Рассвет уже все заметнее. Так, пожалуйста, будь добра, не забудь и ты эти летние подмосковные вечера. Не забудь и ты эти летние подмосковные вечера.
Welcome everybody, this is Denny with my YouTube channel, Why Is This True? And today I have a very special guest, Lada Ray, and she's coming to us from the East Coast. And Lada is an author of Earthshift, the Multidimensional Universe, and Quantum Geocalibration Theories. And she's an internationally recognized for her accurate predictions. She's a quantum futurist and global trendcaster. She's also an internationally certified Feng Shui master and a superb geopolitical analysis. Also, she's a financial consultant and, as I mentioned, an author and also a clairvoyant empath. She was born in Moscow, Russia, but since the age of 2 lived and traveled all over the world. Her family was connected to travel in various modes of transportation, including trains, ships, and spaceships. She prefers walking and using a bicycle, and her husband is an accomplished cyclist. By the age of 38, she's managed to have 3 different successful careers on 3 different continents. Now she has a life of writing and is intrinsically connected to the 3 largest and most powerful countries on the planet, the USA, Russia, and China. Her writing retreat is in the Catskill Mountains of New York. After she started writing, she is busier than ever, but she's also managed to find more time to meditate and be with nature. So welcome, Lada. I really appreciate you doing this interview with me. And actually, to be honest, I didn't think that you were going to accept my invitation. So I'm very happy that you agreed to do this. So thank you.
Very nice to be here, Danny. And yes, of course, how could I not accept your invitation?
Yeah, well, I'm still a small channel, so some people are looking like, that's one of the things they're looking like, well, how many subscribers does he have, or something like that, you know. But so I really appreciate you doing this. So Lada and I talked a little bit about what we could talk about. Now, she's obviously with her bio and her background, there's a lot of things we can talk about. Yeah. So we decided to start with a something that I had mentioned in a previous exchange as we were getting ready for this, and that was a connection, an unexplained connection that I have to Russia. And this goes back to when I was 14 years old. And I would get books about Russian history, and I read about the Tsar, and I read about Rasputin, and I was all interested in everything about Russia. But I don't have any Russian blood. I don't have any ancestors or grandparents or anybody that I know that ever lived there or was from there. And but anyway, there's a whole bunch of other things I could talk about in my life where this Russia connection thing has been reappearing over the years, with me not knowing, well, what's this about? Why is this the case? So anyway, we decided to take that issue and get the ball rolling. So.
Right. I get this question a lot, or some mentions that a lot of my followers and readers on my blog Futurist Trendcast have this Russia connection. I get this mentioned a lot from different people who never seemingly had any Russian connection. And this is a very interesting phenomenon, and I never actually brought it up or discussed it or explained it to anybody, although I think the time is ripe to actually start doing that. And let's see where this leads us. So first of all, Danny, and a lot of people who feel this Russia connection, I'm going to go into one of my core theories, which is called the Earth Shift, the Great Balancer theory. The Great Balancer is Russia, the Great Balancer of the world. Russia rebalances the world when necessary and keeps the world in balance, keeps the world spinning. For example, Russia is known to end wars, while others, usually the West, at least in our latest known history, starts wars. That's aggressive Yang West. Russia is known to end wars, and World War II is a very good example. That Napoleon Wars, that's another good example. Basically, Russia ended both. These are most recent examples, but there are others, of course. So Russia is known as this balancer and rebalancer of the world, known only if you studied my theories. And the Earth Shift, the Great Earth Shift, is that monumental tectonic change that we're going through right now, the whole Earth, and on all levels. That's everyday social structures level, financial structures, economic structures, how business is done, how relationships are done, and most importantly, on the consciousness level of the entire humanity and entire planet Earth. We're trying to break into lower 4D from third dimension that we are in right now, which is physical dimension, fully incarnated dimension, 4D, lower 4D specifically right now, because it's a very big leap between lower 4D and higher 4D, let's just say. So lower 4D, that's internet. That's our interview via the internet. It's all that YouTube, Google, Facebook, everything we do. The fact that I can connect with people all over the world through my blog, Futurist Trendcaster, or through other channels, and tell people and explain to people all these things, and they have this aha moment, and they would never meet me otherwise. That's your lower 4D. So it's a beautiful leap. It's a wonderful leap, which comes with a lot of challenges, with a lot of things that are on the dark side as well. We always have this contrast. It just works differently. In third dimension, it's physical clashes, like physical global wars, for example, or physical either good that you do for somebody or harm. Okay, that's your contrast in 3D. It's physical. It's I don't know, carnivorous, if you like, but it's also beautiful because Mother Earth is so beautiful in its 3D manifestation. So I prefer to be on the beauty side and on the light side. In 4D, the conflict goes into the mind level. Hence, hybrid wars. You know this term. Everybody knows this term by now. Hence, info wars. Hence, currency wars. These expressions are so common. I'm sure that everybody heard them. And other words such as cyber warfare. I call all this combined phenomenon 4D wars, fourth dimension wars. They are not physical. Notice, they're transferred into the area of the mind already. Okay, that's your lower 4D. So we are 1 foot in 3D, 1 foot in lower 4D. That's your humanity today. And we are trying to shift more into that lower 4D while remaining physically incarnated fully in 3D and still enjoying the beauty of the Mother Earth and trying to raise our consciousness to 4D level, which is a step towards 5D, which is the ultimate target right now, ultimate mission for humanity to go back. It lost its star connection, its real truth and the real origin connection, which is a star origin. And consciousness at one point, which is a long discussion, won't go into that, plunged from 5D to 3D. And that generated all these physical wars. So we're trying to get away from that and go into the mind level and then into the cooperative level, which will take a while. Unfortunately, the way we're slowly, tiny steps going in that direction, which will be 5D. And so the entity or the formation that facilitates this great earth shift is Russia. And Russia has always been the great balancer, although there are very dark periods in Russian history. And the dark periods when a great balancer could have died. This is such a big topic that I only can recommend people go back to my webinars that I am releasing now, and I'm sure we will mention them later. And maybe, Danny, you could even post some links in your description box so that it's easier for people to refer. So I don't take up too much time because it's a new discussion.
Yeah, it'll
here.
Be there.
Yeah, so there were lots of, once the world got balanced, rebalanced too much, like excessively to the West. And the West is your quintessential Yang as an extrovert, as an aggressive, as an assertive, in the good side of the West. And I'm calling collective West, that's US, which is the pinnacle of the Western civilization right now, and it's point men, let's just say. And Western Europe, parts of Central Europe too. That's your quintessential Yang, assertive, aggressive. The good side is when the West leads the change, introduces the new. What in the US is called innovation, which I do not necessarily entirely agree with, because usually in the US they take somebody else's inventions, usually Russians or Europeans, and then they make them available to the masses at prices that the masses can afford. And so that's not innovation per se, but what it does, it pushes you in some directions that are new, that are maybe unexplored, that make more people question, or maybe more people are privy to certain changes that could have been if people were not made aware of all this, if like the masses of people, such as iPhone, for example, right, would have been available only to the military or to researchers at certain facility. So that's the great feature of the US and the West in general, make it mass produced. That's and make it available to people. But it comes with a lot of features that are terrible, like consumerism, like this, like frantic greed, that, as they call it in Germany, capitalism on steroids. So that's where we're at as far as the West goes. And so because so much has been given for free, for the taking to the West, so much power, excess power, in the 20th century, especially specifically after World War II. Actually, it started in the beginning of the 20th century. That's how World War I happened, when the great balancer Russia started ailing. Okay, then World War I happens, then Russian Revolution and Civil War, which was a terrible, terrible, bloody event, because Russia rebalanced the world incorrectly. It gave too much power to the West. And throughout the 20th century and into the beginning of the 21st century, we see how much excess power that should not be here. The West has, and specifically USA, through petrodollar, through the fact that US actually owns the global net, for example. Just like whatever they do, they can either monetarily or economically, they can just destroy any country. What about color revolutions? And I could go on and on with this list, and I'm sure that all of our listeners can just name a lot of things that in this category, where US and the West, NATO, all these entities have been doing in the past, 50, 70 years. And so we get into the situation where other countries are very disadvantaged, and Russia has been ailing. Soviet Union fell apart, which created that counterweight. And that's, again, a separate story. In my webinars, I do discuss it. In webinar 2 and in webinar 3, The Future of Money, I discussed what really went on with the Soviet Union and why it was necessary, why it was a necessary step to save and preserve the great balancer. Both Inverted Collapse webinar 2 and webinar 3, The Future of Money, touch upon that. And also I touch upon it, which is an absolutely unknown thing to so many people. In webinar 3, The Future of Money, I touch upon how Stalin tried to create a gold-backed ruble after World War II, and how it could have set history in an absolutely different direction if he succeeded.
So, are you familiar with Mises? Von Mises? Are you familiar with him?
Yes,
the Austrian school?
Yes.
Okay.
But can I, Danny, I just need to finish this because you didn't let me deliver my punchline. So Stalin tried to create it, right? After World War II, and then he got poisoned. And think about it for a second. And I know how brainwashed people are, English-speaking people particularly, about Stalin and the Soviet Union. I'm not going to go into that. I go a little bit more into that in my webinars 2 and 3, and there will be more. There will be an interview when we approach the centennial of the Russian 1917 revolution. There will be an important interview about that, and I'll reveal more about it. And then I will do more interviews about the Putin enigma and the time of Russia. That's going to be either end of this year or beginning of next year. So please, those people who subscribe to Futurist Trendcast and follow me on Twitter, on Facebook, on YouTube, they will know all this. So just follow me and you will know what my schedule is and what you can find out. But the story has been completely screwed up on purpose. We live in falsified history, 90 to 95% falsified history, depending on the era. But the past 1,000 years of human history, and even most recent history, has been tremendously screwed up. That's not to say that there are no atrocities or problems in the USSR or by Stalin or in his name, etc., etc. That's totally not to say. But the view of what Soviet Union is and was, and what Lenin's, Stalin's roles were, is so incredibly wrong throughout, and it is because of very successful brainwashing in the West. I'm not going to go into that anymore. I'm sorry, Van Mrs. Yes, go ahead.
It's okay. It's all right. So getting back to the original question, so how do we explain this anomalous issue of people claiming some type of enigmatic Russian connection that they can't account for? What's that about?
I thought, okay, well, some people may have guessed already where I'm leading with all this, but I will explain it through and through. This is very simple. Danny, you and other people like you who are awakened, who are more awake than others, who see more and who see through the fallacy of this system, who understand, at least in a gut level. Maybe they don't know my theory. Please familiarize yourself. It's at ladaray.com. You can find my theory under Earth Shift system. And even if they don't know it, they feel it on the gut level. That system is lopsided. That system is wrong. That something has to be changed. And they don't know that I call Russia the great balancer. They probably don't. I bet you never did. But
no, I'm familiar with your work. Sorry.
Oh, you are familiar. That's right. I'm sorry. You are familiar.
I actually ordered one of your reports about 2 years ago.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, they go step by step. They explain one subject and then build on each other, these reports. So I know it's a lot to digest oftentimes, but people like you and people like my followers, they all like Russia. They are pro-Russian. They're all Westerners for the most part, or those Russians who have lived in the West for the longest time, and who do understand that something is wrong with the system. They also understand that how much Russia has been maligned and misrepresented in the West, and so they crave that truth. And so these theories, they give them, my theories, Earth Shift and the Great Balancer theory, give them this really great foundation. So what people understand is that there is imbalance. They also, somewhere on deep level, they understand that Russia is the only force on our planet to rebalance the whole thing. We have confirmations of that everywhere. And on the gut level, already leaders of third world countries, of smaller countries, the countries in distress, are coming out and saying Russia is the only country that can rebalance our region or our country or the entire world. Recently, Iraq came out, Iraqi, I believe, VP, vice president or prime minister, something like that. I forget his name, Al-Maliki, I believe. He was in Russia and he said, we request Russia's serious presence in Iraq, militarily, economically, and politically, in order to restrain USA. And Russia is the only country, the only force in our world that can rebalance our country and keep it balanced, rebalance our region, the Middle East that is, and rebalance the world. He said it point blank. So people are coming out and saying these things already point blank. They're not even obfuscating or changing anything. See, there is this even if people don't know how, my structure, my theory is about that. They feel it on the gut level, and eventually there will be an explosion, and a lot of people will understand and know about my theories, because this is what explains the whole thing. And why some people feel this attraction to Russia. Well, you probably are one of the early ones. You felt it since you were a child or a teenager, and this is because even back then you understood this. On some level, you understood that Russia is that force that actually can bring that balance and, I don't know, that light, let's just say. Edgar Cayce predicts that back in the 20th century, and there are others. There is Baba Vanga of Bulgaria. There is Anastasia, the Ringing Cedar series. A lot of people, I'm sure, read that. And I've been predicting this for a while. I wrote 3 novels. Well, 2 of them take place in Russia, and in that I also am doing these kinds of predictions. That was how I started out. My novels began coming out in around 2009 or 2010. I forget which year exactly.
I'll put the links for both versions, Kindle and print, in the description. I've read part of one of them already, and I was going to ask you, do you believe in reincarnation?
Of course.
Okay. All right.
Reincarnation is part
I think that's probably another part on my end anyway that has not been investigated and does explain the Russia connection in my case, because I don't think it's just a social awareness or geopolitical awareness that pulled me towards Russia. It's much more of a personal thing that just has not yet been discovered yet.
Do you want me to tell you when you were Russian?
Sure, of course.
I can do a lot of things, including this. I access Akashic records, and I can tell you I don't need the regressions for that. So you were Russian in 3 or 4 lifetimes in around 15th, 16th, and 13th, 14th centuries, thereabouts. Okay, that's the closest. So you were definitely. So you have at least 3, 4 lifetimes that you remember. But see, that's the point. I look at everything multidimensionally. Those apparently a lot of people were Russians in previous lifetimes, and or Slavic, like very close Slavic, because there's another bomb. I don't know if I should drop on listeners right now. My followers already know this, but there was a much bigger, let's just say, Russia in medieval times than we are led to believe.
Yeah,
And
so the other area that I was is Serbia.
Was in Europe too, a lot of Europe, and it slowly was separatism was very rampant. Let's just say, what is happening now with Ukraine, the separatism from Russia, because Ukrainians, I'm half Ukrainian, if we want to call it Ukrainian, because we don't even like this word anymore, because that was imposed on us basically. In my passport, when I was born in the Soviet Union, I could choose whether I wanted to be Ukrainian or Russian, father Russian, mother Ukrainian. But we don't like this word anymore. We can call ourselves Malo-Russians, which is Russia Minor, which is the equivalent of being Ukrainian. That refers to parts of central Ukraine. Or we can call ourselves Novo-Russians, which is New Russians, okay, which refers to the southern part of what is today Ukraine. Anyway, so that's separatism. And I don't mean Donbass, I mean Kiev, the Ukro-fascist, Ukro-Nazi regime that is wreaking havoc in all over Ukraine and trying to separate it from Russia proper. We're all Russians. We just have different, slightly different geographic, resonance there.
Regions, yeah.
Yeah, it's like different regions. And there was a lot more Russia. And it has been proven exhaustively. And I can prove it even linguistically. I don't even have to go into other territories. But there are so many genetic, you can do it through Akashic records, you can do it through symbolism, you can do it through names, toponymics, and all kinds of linguistics. I can prove it toponymically and linguistically, just like that, so many proofs. London, for example, the word London, or strawberry, or raspberry, for that matter, or my name, Lada. And then, what do you think about this? Lady. And lad. A nice strapping lad. Lada. What do you think? What do you think? How does that relate? Oh, Lord. Even Lord. That's also a derivative from the same Lada.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
And Lada is the goddess of harmony. So we are going into this. Yes, so you did have a few lifetimes. And I'll tell you why. You mentioned that they never showed up in a few. What you did? I
had a couple readings. Yeah, there was one reading that did mention previous life with my wife in China, and then there was another one. Well, I could show it to you, but yeah, but in those, it wasn't exhaustive. It was just kind of like relevant to the reading at the time that it was done in relation to other things that were going on, family members, what have you. But the Russia thing did not come up.
Well, it depends on how you ask the question. Do you want me to tell you why it did not come up, what
Sure.
I see?
Sure.
Because in those lifetimes, it depends on how you pose your question. If you pose the question when I met with members of my family in other lifetimes, you will get one answer. If you pose the question, I have a problem, which is what most people do regressions to uncover the root of a problem in this lifetime.
Yeah, and that's this one was mostly about that and not about family members. The family members came in as an aside.
Okay, and you mean that you asked about a specific problem in this lifetime, right?
Not really. It was but mostly a reading that was done under generic terms. Okay, I think the question was more about an addiction issue, and then also
Which is a problem.
and then I know, and then also an explanation for kind of an anti-government type of milieu.
Direct.
For me, in this
Okay.
lifetime, that wasn't explained. I didn't know why I was so vehemently anti-government, anti-military in this life. I didn't have the experiences in this life that would account for those strong feelings.
Right.
Yeah.
And was your anti-government kind of direction, was that explained in your readings or not?
Oh yes, it was.
It was explained.
Yes.
Okay. So there are usually we have themes throughout many lifetimes.
Right.
So if you incarnate a lot on Earth, which not all of us incarnate a lot of on Earth, like for example, here on Earth, because I'm a cosmic soul, and that's a whole new thing to explain what that means. But because I'm a cosmic soul, I not an earthly soul or earthbound soul. I distinguish these categories. I have relatively few experiences on Earth, but I do have some. Otherwise, I could not be here today, in this body and like function properly, because you do need some experience. So for you, you have themes. So you apparently had this going on. I mean, I'm not asking you exactly what was said in your readings, but you apparently had that going on in previous lifetimes when you were questioning the government, questioning things, and then you don't, right? Yeah, he wants some attention probably. So I love dogs and cats and all animals.
Yeah, we have two dogs, 3 cats, 2 donkeys,
wow.
and 7 chickens.
That's great. Yeah, because you have all that space, right?
Yeah.
So you actually had that history apparently, but if we go into the Russian side, I can tell you why it may not have come up in your readings. There are several reasons that come to mind right away. Number one, you actually were happy in those lifetimes. And when somebody is happy in any lifetime, it actually does not come up in readings, because what pushes, what your higher self and your mind pushes up to the fore are those times when you actually had problems that you want to resolve in this lifetime. So if you were happy in those lifetimes, and that explains immediately why you are attracted to Russia. You were happy in those lifetimes, okay? You have those incredible karmic memories that are very happy. So to you, that's a natural connection. I mean, when I was in the stage when I was doing regressions and soul retrievals, which I can do by myself, I don't need somebody's help, and I've done plenty of those, on and off, and that was a long time ago when I was also like healing myself from old traumas and retrieving those bits of soul that might have splintered off because of traumas in this lifetime or previous lifetime. So I also got pretty few Russian lifetimes. I think only one as a part of this healing process, but that's because I did not have that many problems in those few lifetimes in Russia that I might have had. But again, as I said, a lot of the West was part of Russia at the time. And that actually, so when I saw myself as living in Prussia as a little boy, Russia, okay? Prussia is what? Part of Germany. Russia. If you really want to say poor Russia, okay? Porossiya in Russian. So when I felt Russian living in Prussia, or when I lived in, that was a very early, long time ago, when I was Etruscan, and what is considered the dead civilization that disappeared, that dissolved. Etruscans supposedly lived, falsified history, incidentally, not true, lived supposedly in about 700 to 1000 BC, okay? And then they, disappeared from what we call today Italy. What is supposed to be northern Italy today, disappeared, and nobody also could read their they left a lot of beautiful artwork, amazing artwork, and a lot of beauty, which most of it was destroyed by that aggressive Roman culture, of course, to annihilate any trace of that Etruscan civilization. And so nobody supposedly could read it. And in Latin, there is even an expression in Latin. It's not even contemporary. It's like supposedly the expression was made up over 2,000 years ago that Etruscan is not legible, non-legato. Okay, so is not legible. And so in 19th and 20th century, all Western researchers, quote unquote, you can from that you can understand why I'm nowhere near the scientific field, because that's how ignorant they are. That's how narrow-minded they are. They kept saying the same thing. It's not legible. We cannot decipher. Until Russians got their hands on it and using ancient Russian alphabet deciphered everything. All those stone stelas
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone. and now for the clincher, imagine what we know as Etruscans or Etruscan civilization. You know what they call sometimes, like, mockingly in English, Russians, Ruskies, Etruscan. Does it remember? And in Russian, Russian, a person Russian like me. Well, I am a female, so I'm Ruskaya. That's for a female. For a male, that would be Ruski. So in Russian, Etruscans would sound Etruski. And you know what et means? At the beginning means etsi, which is these. These Russians, or those Russians. Some believe that it was actually mirrored. So it was te Ruski, which means those Russians. And now also consider English words this, te, eti, this, that. I mean, how close that is. Linguistically, I can prove the origin of many words in English that nobody considers.
So that civilization, probably suppressed by the Romans, could have had a lot of goddess energy type features in it, which had to be eliminated in order for that whole male paradigm to establish itself culturally and politically in that part of the world.
Yes. Right? No, actually, you're absolutely right about the goddess. The goddess element. However, and I definitely want to go into this when we get to this subject later, Benny. The thing is that all Russian civilizations, this is an important part of my Great Balancer theory, are Yin Yang. And just to briefly define for those who are new to this, I hope everybody knows what Yin Yang means. But Yin is the female, is the goddess, is the receptive, is the nurturing, is like our Mother Earth. And Yang is father figure, it's aggressive, assertive, and it's in a good manifestation, and the best manifestation is Father Heaven, basically, okay? So you need a balance of both. What we have on all levels, from personal, like, relationship between the husband and wife, like when they clash, when they actually, relationships have gotten better between husbands and wives. People are becoming more and more aware. I'm very happy about that, because up until recently, these so-called, I forget what it's called, what humans call them, but it's something about this clashes on sexual clashes, like they start arguing because they love each other, but they have to argue all the time in order to, and they have to assert their ground. So instead of working cooperatively, yin yang,
symbol.
Around, symbol, which is like, it's together,
Right.
It's supposed to work together. That's your quintessential fifth dimensional symbol. Quintessential. There is a little bit, a dot of yang in yin and vice versa, right? But they work together, okay? They're supposed to be close to each other, not argue. Same is happening here. Like yin side, which is the West, took over, and you're absolutely right. Romans were some of the early Yang cultures. They took over literally the rest of the world, and they suppressed, colonized all of the Yin cultures, which is global South and global East. So if you take South America, Africa, well, excluding Australia, of course, which is quintessentially part of the Western world today, but notice that it started out as a penal colony. So it was suppressed just like everything else. It's just that there are so few Aborigines there, and only God knows what was done to those who actually existed there, you know?
Yeah, and the British Isles, that's the one where there's a lot of suppressed history there, because the Romans had to, and other cultures that had the male paradigm, ethos, so to speak, in the British Isles is amazing. And they really, I think the history there has been so cobbed up, you can't even make heads or tails of it anymore. But that was a very powerful feminine or goddess energy type cultural center that was just, they had to put so much energy in suppressing that there. And I don't think they ever really were 100% successful, because there's still germs of it there that are going to reflourish, and that's going to be another genesis point. But the other thing I want to ask you before we get too far along, we're already an hour, almost an hour already, is Anatoly Fomenko. Do you know about Anatoly Fomenko? Anatoly Fomenko?
Are you talking Fomenko-Nosovsky theory?
No, Anatoly Fomenko wrote a 7-volume series about a theory that he has about Pope Gregory actually removing 1,000 years of history, human history, from the popular.
Yes, that's called. There are two authors. Fomenko is one, and second one is Nosovsky. There are two of them. So Fomenko is, I believe he started this whole thing. And yes, of course I'm familiar. It's called, oh gosh, I forgot. I usually know it in Russian, this.
His all 7 volumes of his book has been translated into English. And only 3 of them are available, I think. But it's a fascinating story. And it's how successful the rewriting of human history has been.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Fomenko and Nosovsky are very important. They rose the issue on their end because one is historian, another mathematician, and they employed also astronomers to confirm their theory, both mathematically and astronomically. Like, for example, when somebody in some history book, we are told that the Battle of, and I'm shooting of the calf here, so
that's okay.
The Battle of Hastings. The Battle of Hastings, I believe, a famous battle, happened, and in such and such day, such and such month, such and such year, and the moon in the sky was this, and Mars was bright, and they described. That's why they employed astronomers. That was very interesting. That was fascinating how they did that. And so through recalculating, astronomically employing computer specialists, very advanced computer programmers and specialists, they proved that these battles could not have occurred, those events could not have occurred as a traditional Western, and actually we studied in the Soviet Union and Russia the same kind of history. You know, it has been across the board completely changed. And I'll tell you when the changing started. 17th, 18th century. That's
Pope
when
Gregory, right? When they changed the calendar.
Well, I don't know about Pope Gregory, but there was a systematic rewriting of history. I'll tell you what happened, what I know, and how I see this. Systematic rewriting of history and destruction of monuments and books that held correct dates and everything, unless people managed to conceal them. So books were all destroyed. Russia went through absolute wholesale destruction of all of its history, absolutely wholesale. The emissaries were sent. You will ask, what emissaries? From where? The Vatican kind of started it in about 17th and then 18th century, and it was picked up by Germany and the British, and taken to the next level. And now, of course, we have USA, but we also have USA lapdogs who have their own agendas, their own separatist agendas, such as Poland, Romania, well, now fascist Ukraine, of course, also. I don't hold back about Ukraine, it's fascism. So if somebody is surprised to hear that, the Kiev junta that we have in Kiev, I'm going to mention it. I talk a lot about it on my blog. It's a fascist regime. Well, the Baltics, which is Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they don't hold any weight otherwise, but they are very useful to the West as these Trojan horses, as these lapdogs who bark at Russia. Basically, yeah, but Germans were very active about it in the 18th century, and emissaries, Germans specifically, emissaries were sent to Russia to destroy books that were held at monasteries under the pretext that they are royal. That's the problem with Russian czars in 18th century and part of the 19th century too. They hired those supposed linguists who they were German, and they were supposed to write Russian history and Russian linguistical course, like for language course. They were Germans. They didn't speak Russian. Okay, so they would go to monasteries where all that ancient wisdom was held. A lot of books, and there were distractions before when Christianity came to Russia, which was 1,000 years ago. So a lot of true Vedic knowledge. Vedism is, it as in Hindu term, but it really is a Russian term, or equally Russian terms, let's say. Such a big discussion, I'm not even going to go into that. But they were destroying all these documents, all these scrolls, all the books that were held there by monks and tended to for centuries. They would say that they need to copy them, and so they will take them on a loan to St. Petersburg, to the capital, where they had their scribes to copy it, and they would never return it. If anybody tried to object, they would either kill those monks, or they would burn down the monastery or bankrupt the monastery. So it's like a total war going on. That's just part of what was happening. And of course, they rewrote history completely. And a lot of Russian researchers have proven it. As far as 1,000 years of history missing, that's an incredibly fascinating thing. I think Fomenko and Nosovsky are awfully important to our future and to awakening. They do make some mistakes, I'll say that. But nobody is infallible, No. They have to deal with
the point is that they're taking a subject and they're making an outrageous claim, but they're also applying many different disciplines to the question. Like you said, astronomy, mathematicians. They at one point I was told that there was over 100 researchers working with Anatoly Fomenko on this issue. So where else in the world are you going to get that kind of brain power applied to the issue of an incorrect history for humanity? And it's got to start somewhere, and if it's something relatively recent like that, then it's okay to extrapolate from that point using academia or whatever tools you can obtain to go back and look at the rest of it. Because if there's such a big lie can be foisted onto the supposedly intelligent public, then it bears the logic would tell you then, well, we should be looking at other areas because there's a very high likelihood that we haven't been told the truth about that either. So it's time to apply some new protocols and bring into question all these things that have just been assumed. We just assume that this is correct, and then we build upon that. Well, no, go back to the premise and start to question the premise.
Well, here's the thing. I just like to say this. I don't say it enough, probably. I was talking about the Soviet Union and how all that was a lie, what is presented in the West. And you should go on YouTube and read some of the comments. These commies, these Zionists, they destroyed 100 million people. The whole population of the entire Soviet Union at the time was something like 150 million people, and they destroyed 100 million of them. So how did the population then, even after the war, was don't even get me started. I mean, there's so many. No, they destroyed 1 billion. Why stop at 100 million? Hello, 10 million, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Well, so much craze going on, and they just learn something, and they run on their inner incongruences, their inner problems, their inner anger against, and maybe they are angry at this system, but they're extrapolating and transferring, sublimating, in fact, their anger onto. I think because people at that level always have to have enemies.
Yeah, I think my point was is that we're starting to see that there's fertile ground in this whole issue of history that's been rewritten. So I mean, I guess what I'm getting at is that refocusing with academic, or I don't really like that word academia too much, but I mean, I guess just serious researchers going back and looking at history, they're going to find fertile ground there, as evidenced by what Anatoly Fomenko has been able to do. So I mean, people shouldn't be dissuaded from questioning very deeply many of the things that we've been told about human history.
Danny, except the problem is that anything that Fomenko and Nosovsky have done is highly suppressed. It is not only suppressed in the West, there is even a certain amount of suppression and inability to accept all this, even in Russia. And do you know, by the way, how long they've been working on this theory? Do you have any idea how long it took them to put it together, and how long it has been out there? You know it today. I learned about it several years ago myself, and I've been living in the West for almost 30 years, let's just say. And do you know how long they work on this theory? Just take a wild guess.
I don't know, 5-6 years? I don't know.
40 years.
Yeah, but for me, that's not the point. The point is that the 7 volumes of Anatoly Fomenko's book have been translated into English, and 3 of them that I know of for sure, I have them, are available in the West. So this idea of suppression is weakening. It's falling apart.
It's weakening, but the suppression is not by some bad Uncle Sam or bad Soros. Suppression is by humans, our fellow humans. Go outside on the street, and all these people are suppressing it. They don't want to hear it.
No argument from me on that. I'm just saying that it is available. So what it is to me is it's a bright light on the horizon, showing that there's fertile ground for questioning the standardized stories about human history. So I mean, to me, it's very hopeful. Yeah. It's a very hopeful sign that people can go back and look at serious research, and that serious research will reveal that, oh gosh, we've been lied to about a lot of things, about a lot of serious things.
Right. Well, and it brings us back, incidentally, to what we talked about previously, Russia, the Great Balancer, and how Russia used to be a lot larger as far as extending into Europe. In fact, many people in Europe, maybe all of them, at one point spoke Russian. It was not today's Russian, obviously, but as I said, I can prove it linguistically. I wanted to mention a couple of things. Number one, that Nosovsky and Fomenko are not the only ones who brought this up. On the linguistical front, there is Valery Chudinov, and since I am linguist by my original education, that appeals to me a lot more than mathematics or astronomy or even anthropology, how some of them go. There is also genetic proofs, and there are these genetic tests that can be done on certain levels. But for me, like linguistics, and Valery Chudinov, he invented a new branch of linguistics, which is geolinguistics. It actually talks about he actually reads signs that others cannot read, and the lettering on large stone structures and even geoglyphs. Geoglyphs are Earth, like Earth. As like, for example, he uses Google Earth pictures to read some letters that could be 10 miles long. And why on earth would there be letters which are semi-destroyed, But what was used in the ancient days, like 1,000 years and before that, what was used as part of geoglyphs, the landscape. Like, for example, if there is a hill or a number of hills, they would be part of the letter. Or if there is like a trees, like woods, right? Or partially it could be buildings of a city, if it was a city. And it's again a very fascinating and long story how he reads Russian signs in Italy somewhere.
Is that available on the internet?
Yes, only in Russian though. But what you might ask, why the heck anybody wanted 10-kilometer long letters? For what? And that's because people flew in those days. They could fly. Well, that brings us into like a completely different topic. The Antarctica comes into this incidentally, and what kind of flying contraptions they had. People flew. So you fly over a city, for example, and you want to know that this is your city. So that's a sign. Like, you arrive to the train station, they say, welcome to station such and such, welcome to New York, for example, right? So they had the same, welcome to Moscow. So people who fly, that they could land in the right location, so they wouldn't zoom past. Well, that's the conclusion that was made by Russian researchers. That brings us back to the UFOs, Antarctica, stories. I get a lot of questions about that, and I'm just unable to even go into that. But maybe at one point, we will look into that.
Is your material, the work you do, available in Russian language?
No, see, that's the thing. I'm part of my mission is to be a bridge between cultures. So I'm bridging.
But don't your Russian friends just say they ask, well, Lada, what are you telling these Americans?
My Russian friends? I've lived.
No. Don't they ask you?
No, I don't know. It's complicated. I just don't want to go into that. But the thing is that right now I would like my stuff to be available in Russian. I really would. And one day I might translate or I might engage somebody. I don't know. I just don't have enough time.
No, it's very time consuming, but that would be immensely valuable, I think.
My main mission right now, I know that some Russian political analysts are quoting me. I heard that more than once in Russian geopolitical talk shows. That's an interesting thing. My quotes, my terms they use, I can see that. Those who actually read the English, obviously. But Russians also have their own ideas. And my main mission is to help Russia, the Great Balancer, rebalance the world so that it's a balance between yin and yang. Mm-hmm. And I do want to talk about it a little bit towards the end, Danny, because this actually is super important to understand. So it's not, so that's one of my missions. And for that, I'm bridging, I'm explaining to my readers, my followers in the West, English speakers, and they are from all over the world, including everywhere in Europe, because most Europeans speak English. I have people from Africa, I have people from Asia, of course, from Australia, from all of the English-speaking world, even from South America too, whoever speaks English. Their English is kind of on the weaker side, but most Europeans speak it. I do have some Russians and some Russian speakers who live in the West as well, but it's very, very international, very global. I'm actually really enjoying it. I have Japanese, as far as I don't have any Chinese, because over there all that is blocked. But those Chinese who live outside of China, I've got, or Asians who live outside of China, I've got a lot of those too. Indians, I have everybody really, like lots of people from UK, Canada, tons of Canadians, incidentally. Yeah. Indians are pretty awake. Of course, the biggest cross-section is Americans, but Australians, of course, everybody really, people right. From all over. Yeah. I enjoy that tremendously. I'm very international. So my job is to enlighten and educate people in the West, primarily in the West, but all over the world, who are English speakers, who can understand English, because that's my chosen medium of exchange right now. Right. Of communication, I mean, right now. From there on, we just, whoever, people have translated into German some of my writings. I don't know if any other languages, but I've been told about German translations. But it's all a big work. It's a huge work. And whenever
I'm always begging for translation. And that was one of my first desires, was that some of the interviews would be translated to Russian. And then someone came from Turkey and offered to do translations into the Turkish language. So and then whenever that happens, I always say, well, you pick which interview that you want to translate. I'm not going to tell you which one. You pick it. And so the first one that we did was a secret space program in whistleblower by the name of Tony, and that's the one that this fellow from Turkey decided to translate, and we did that interview in 4 parts, and today he started translating part 4 into Turkish. And I was very interested in that whole phenomena for me, because I was really focusing on Russia, as typically, is what I do, but I thought maybe Eastern Europe, and then this fellow came from Turkey, and then we realized that that's considered the geographical center of the world. And I thought, well, that's appropriate, that's really kind of cool. So he's from Ankara, and so that whole series now is going to be translated into Turkish as the first, full interview that's translated of one of my videos into a foreign language. But I do think that's very important, that, for people that have a message like your message, and, teaching people about geopolitics, about a more kind of balanced view of the world, what's happening politically behind the scenes in the world, and where the power is moving, what the power's doing, that it become more international and not so nationalistically focused. So the more, messengers like yourself can become international. And for me, the barrier for me, from my perspective, is that I don't want to be talking just the English-speaking world. I would like to be talking to more of the non-English speaking world. Yeah. So I'm always begging for translators. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about, that because if you're an international appeal, and I know I'm just going to keep doing that. I'm just going to keep begging for translators, and they'll come up. They'll come up.
Okay. So here's the thing about, I actually never asked anybody to translate. That never occurred to me. As a matter of fact, maybe I should start asking if people want to translate into other languages, whatever, we'll see what that might be. Yeah. I never thought about it this way. Actually, okay, I'll think about it. I'll give it a thought. As far as, English is English, and that's why eventually I probably will get into some Russian translations, possibly, but I would prefer that somebody else would do this for me.
Yeah, because it's a lot of work.
I just can't, that's not a distraction, but I cannot allocate this much time to it, because I need to keep coming up and producing new stuff. Webinars, I need to write books, which I'm not even finding time for that. I was supposed to come out with a book which was highly anticipated for the longest time, The Putin Enigma. Probably it will be The Putin Enigma and the Time of Russia. And I finally decided that I'm going to do webinars because I'm so far not getting around to putting all this in writing with everything else going on.
Oh, I see.
So we'll see. But eventually, of course, the book, my theories, the Earthshift theory, the quantum calibrations, and the Great Balancer, all that is supposed to also be in a book form, and it will be eventually, but it might take me a few years to actually solidify it into the book form. I might need some help. I might need somebody who can help me type it up, and haven't gotten around to asking anybody because,
Yeah, I think this cooperative thing, people working together on stuff like this is really important, and it's hard. It's not easy to do because we take ownership of it, and we want to do a mother hen thing on it, and it's really about like letting go, delegating, trusting, And it's hard to do if you've got this. This is my creation, and I want to make sure it's done my way. And I'm in the middle of that right now because we're trying to expand this whole thing that I'm doing with Carl, and so yeah, it's not easy, but it's necessary. And it's part of like what you're talking about, this moving from 3D to lower 4D with the goal of being 5D. There's a level of cooperation.
Gold? I never said gold was 5D. Don't misquote. I never said that gold was 5D.
I didn't say that either. I said the goal.
Oh, the goal. I'm so sorry.
It's
I
all
told
right.
you the gold. I was like,
it's all right.
no,
it's
gold
okay.
is quintessential 3D. That's
it's okay.
the thing.
No, what I'm saying is that there's a level of trust and cooperation that's going to come along with that transition. That's not easy for humans because we're very egocentric.
Yes, but there are some of us who are evolved, very evolved, or awakening. And again, I quantify it through my quantum and geocalibrations. What's happening with each person, what level each person is. It's all quantified. There is mathematics, but it's a scale, but it's also interpretation, which is multidimensional interpretation. Yeah, it's a whole different subject, of course, but the whole thing is very fascinating, and we are in the midst of this massive earth shift. And this earth shift is a tectonic shift. We are pulling away from the old paradigm, and there's no choice. There are so many things that are going on, including the explosion of the population, and this kind of number of the population plus exploding money supply. I make a case for it in my Earthshift webinar 3, The Future of Money, how all this tied together in the 20th century, and why incidentally dollar lost over 90% of its value throughout the 20th century, and all other currencies too, incidentally. It was a similar process for every currency. How that is tied to the explosion of population, several explosions of the population, and then explosion of money supply and other things, how petrodollar is tied to that, how the dollar becoming a global currency, why there is no gold-backed currency, why it's not possible. I'm tying all that together in the Future of Money webinar because there is so much material. It's 6 hours of and material is like packed into it. We have 10 segments which are everything from why consciousness of humanity fell from 5D, fifth dimension, to 3D, and how we are trying to climb into incremental baby steps into lower 4D from this 3D, and how conflict is transferred into the mind area, from the physical dimension into mind dimension, and what is the fifth dimension being the main goal, but that's one of my missions, is to lift human consciousness towards fifth dimension, or at least solidly into fourth dimension. In my lifetime, we'll see how that all works out and where we can get with this. But that's one of my big missions. And then we go into fiat and the paper currency and my predictions for all that, because I do make predictions. I have the track record that is very, very hard to beat in the world. Although I know that as some of the so-called gurus and stuff, they whether it's jealousy or lack of acceptance, because she's a woman, I mean, what does she know? We men know everything. And, I never talk about this, and I never talk like this, because I love men. Men are just as much as women a part of our universe. I always had terrific relations with men. As a matter of fact, more of my followers are men than women. And there was a time when I had almost exclusively men as my followers, and based on the material I presented. But my theories also will become mainstream eventually. I'm not worried about that. Anybody who is smart enough, who really wants to awaken, who really wants to understand the truth and build that structure, understand how the clock works, how it really works. Well, that's where you go. LadaRay.com, Futurist, Trendcast. I explain these theories in my webinars and my Earthshift reports. And there will be more and more and more coming up. So I intend to completely explain and completely write out my theories, but there are many of them. So this is taking me some time. I'm only human after all, you know. It's only one me. So yeah, so if I get help from people who I trust and who will help me with something, I'll be happy. I'll be happy to work with them.
Right.
But, you know.
Yeah, it's easy to get spread thin, and then you want to limit it to something that you can do well and do a good job on. If you're trying to do, writing and YouTube videos and webinars, and sometimes the plate gets too full, so you need to kind of like truncate it down to something that you can focus on that really works. Yeah. So.
I'm actually expanding, but into more areas, including like YouTube, including interviews like this one.
Yeah.
Because I did audio interviews up until now, and this is why I was slightly unsure. And
well, I'm very happy to be part of this, because I think it's like we were saying earlier before we started. That just being able to see the human face. The mannerisms and speaking and stuff, it helps form more personal connections, which people don't get with just the audio. And I always thought it was kind of a silly thing to do YouTube interviews where you just had a still picture and you're hearing voices. I say, take advantage of the medium. Like people are very interested to see each other. I mean, that's kind of what we're missing in this modern culture. We used to go visit each other in the homes and have coffee and have tea or have dessert, or there was a social interaction that's very much missing in the modern culture now. We've supplanted it, we've replaced it with all this internet experience, which is kind of devaluing in so many ways. So I think you doing interviews like this is going to be a very good thing for you. Especially garnering a new segment of followers who are interested in creating more of a personal connection.
Well, the thing is that what you described, like you missed that personal touch, personal experience, like visiting each other. I miss that too tremendously. But this actually, again, going back to my multidimensional theory, 3D, 4D, remember as we discussed, this is what's happening when you're transitioning into 4D out of 3D. 3D is that physical interaction. That's the Kai 3D, which is beautiful. I miss that myself. I miss my friends that I haven't seen for I don't know how many years. I miss sitting in the cafe with those people who are so close. You just like, you finish each other's sentences. You just have that tea or coffee, and you're just having a good time. And people still do that. But those of us who are in a position to help others, pull them up, to transition them into higher consciousness level, we unfortunately also have to give up a lot of this physical stuff. And it bothered me for quite a number of years until I understood that there's only so much I can do. So I found really great people who were followers and who became really close friends online, actually through my blog, primarily Futurist Trendcast. I just opened up a whole new world, because there was a time when I quit my Wall Street job, which was 2003 thereabouts, and I decided I was so disgusted with everything that I learned. I didn't want a part of it, and I went in a completely different direction, metaphysical, holistic. So I became internationally certified Feng Shui master to start with, and then I started writing my novels, because I already saw where all this was going. I already had these theories in place, such as Russia, the Great Balancer. Incidentally, my predictions from the Earth Shifter, I need to post that a little excerpt that look what's happening. Look how they're attacking Russia. Look at this craze, this anti-Russian craze that is going on in the U.S., Europe too, but U.S. primarily. I predicted all that in the Earth Shifter. I need to post that when there is that was I wrote that, I believe, 2009. I published the Earth Shifter in 2012, but it took me several years to write it on and off, and because I was shaping up the whole concept. It was like a pretty complex concept of the Earth Shifter. From there, my theory, the Earth Shift theory, emerged. From there on, I am inviting people rather to follow me on Futurist Trendcast, which is my blog, and I'm sure we can post some kind of link somewhere.
Oh yeah, it'll be in the video. This video.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, terrific. So Futurist Trendcast is the blog. LadaRay.com is the website where webinars, Earthshift reports, consultations, and of course my freebies where I explain multidimensional theory, Great Balancer, and Earthshift theories. Well, it's not a full explanation, but it gives you a lot. Right. And my spiritual geopolitics theory that I might rename as multidimensional geopolitics. We'll see how that works. So there is also quantum calibrations and geo-calibrations are there. A lot of material that is free. And my YouTube channel, again, Lada Ray on YouTube. Lada Ray, just Lada Ray. Right. Or type me in on Google, Lada Ray. Right. And everything comes up, of course.
It'll come up.
Yeah. People follow me on Facebook and Twitter. I've been on Twitter for a long time also, where I post anything new that I post on Futurist Trendcast. So I'm inviting people to follow me there because that's where you get, at least you get anything new that comes out. I make sure that I post in all those venues, okay? All right. That I just mentioned.
All right.
And that's there's a lot of fun. I have a lot of fun. My life is a ton of fascinating discoveries. Even if I already have my entire theory in my head, or my entire webinar in my head, which is what happens. I have it in my head first, like The Future of Money, which I released just a few days ago, and it's people love it. I got a ton of great reviews. I'm not even, I don't even have time to post them all. Tons of great reviews. People are buying like really well, and I'm actually happy with the result. But at first, I had that whole webinar in my head, which I love doing. And then once I digest it in my head, then I start putting it out. Or if it's an article, or if it's a book, same with that. If it's any theory that I put out, I have it in my head, and I try to write down what I can. But see, third dimension is so slow. That those dimensions where the whole system structure forms in your head, which is 6 7 dimensions. That's the structure forming dimensions.
Right. No one can speak that fast.
Exactly. So the structure belongs in 6 7 dimensions, and I'm talking cosmic structures, like crystalline structure of the Earth, for example, or a new structure by which the whole humanity will live for a while. Until it gets old, and then it gets replaced with a new structure, which is the norm, okay? Nothing is forever. But this is what people need to hear right now, these theories. So thank you very much yet again for inviting me and for having me here, giving me an opportunity to speak a little bit about that as well.
Yeah.
And if you still want to talk about the sacred feminine and the goddess thing, we can. I'm not... opposed to that, even though I said 1.5 hours, but go ahead if you would still like to ask me this question, and maybe I can give you some.
Well, I think maybe we could do a follow-up. I think we've kind of addressed it, and I think just the fact that we've done the interview like this with us being able to see you is a very good testimony to the re-establishment of the goddess energy. And I'm very happy to promote that. As most of my viewers know, I've talked about this quite a bit in the past. So, I think we've kind of captured a big part of your endeavors here, and I'd like to go ahead and maybe close now, since I need to keep my files at a reasonable, manageable level, and also be conscientious of our viewers' time too. and I hope that you would consider us maybe doing a follow-up at some point, and we could go into the whole goddess energy subject in more detail, which is a very important part of healing planet Earth, I think,
Yes, so the goddess, I did mention, I believe that my first name, Lada, that's actually the name, very ancient Rus, what we call Rus, which is the ancient correct word for Russia, what is called today Russia, Vedic, Vedic from knowledge, the one who knows, like wizards, witch, the wise one. A Vedic word for the goddess of harmony and balance. How fitting, right? And here's like my great balancer and great harmonizer, which is Russia, and my theories and all that, and Yin Yang, which is, I'm all about balance. Basically, yes, I would love to do that. It's such a topic. It's a huge topic, as a matter of fact. Yeah. And I can approach it from so many angles. It's fascinating. It's very fascinating.
It is, and it's very hopeful. It's a very positive subject, I think, and it's kind of like going home. That's the way I look at it.
Yes, yeah. And I will drop some bombs on you.
Okay.
Some truth bombs and some multidimensional bombs, and even maybe forbidden history bombs. I promise I will do that.
Yeah. Okay.
On you and on all the listeners that might. Actually, don't fall off your chair, in other words.
All right. Well, good. Well, thank you so much for doing this with me, Lada. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was a lot of fun, and thank you for having me.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.